Well, welcome to this webinar on enabling antivirus and firewall. My name's Simon Newman. I'm the Chief Exec of the Cyber Resilience Centre for London. As we know, firewalls and antivirus are one of the most common and important features of cyber security. Today, in this brief little webinar, we'll just be talking about how important they are, what they do, and how to configure and set them up to give you as much protection as possible. But before we started, I just wanted to highlight a survey, a very important survey that came out last week from the UK government. So every year, it publishes a report called the Cyber Breaches Survey, which is carried out by Ipsos Mori on behalf of the Department for Science, Innovation and Technology. And the Cyber Breaches Survey is generally considered as one of the most reliable indicators of cybercrime and its impact against businesses and charities across England and Wales. And this year's report has been quite interesting. So having crunched through it, I thought there's some really useful and interesting information that I just wanted to share with people that we can find in the 2023 survey as it currently stands. So first of all, just around about 1/3 of businesses suffered at least one cyber attack or breach within the past 12 months. Now the good news is that that's actually down from last year, which was around about 39%. So potentially we're seeing a fewer number of organisations suffering, which hopefully is a positive sign. Although again, if we crunch through the data, what we're seeing is that perhaps smaller organisations are perhaps less able to spot cyber attacks or breaches than perhaps they have been previously. So an opportunity perhaps to look at that in a bit more detail at a later webinar. However, what we are seeing is an increase in cyber attacks against medium-sized and larger organisations. So typically 59% of medium organisations now have suffered at least one cyber attack or breach in the last 12 months, and that rises to 69% in larger organisations. So it just goes to show that there is still a significant number of organisations being attacked out there, and those attacks come from a variety of different places. Cyber insurance, always interesting to see whether organisations have some form of cyber insurance in place to help them get back as quickly as possible in the event of an attack or a breach. Again, that's gone down about 6% from last year, so only about 37% do. Most of those are as part of a broader business insurance policy. Only about 7% of businesses actually have a dedicated cyber insurance policy. So again, perhaps a concern that needs to be explored a bit further into some of those barriers that may be present at the moment. Perhaps most worrying, we're seeing very, very few organisations actually delivering or offering any form of training to their staff on common cyber threats. So now it's just 18%, dropping down from the figure from last year. And that's basically things like phishing awareness or security awareness training in general. And so only 1 in 5 organisations currently doing that. Something perhaps a little bit more positive, the number of organisations reporting incidents is reasonably good. I mean, in terms of it's gone down from last year, but 38% at least do report something. Usually, in most cases, that report will be going to perhaps a managed service provider, not necessarily the Information Commissioner's Office or the police. But it's a positive that it's actually being reported, and at least we can able to track what some of those reports are. Again, another worrying concern is that for perhaps medium and larger sized organisations, there has been a drop in the number of board members with responsibility for cybersecurity. So that seems to have been given a lower priority within the organisation. And as we see that now, again, a drop that about 70% of those businesses, although they see it as a priority, that is dropping. And that's uniform across both businesses and charities. And then I think this is an interesting one as we talk about antivirus and firewall today, that still the most common and the most disruptive form of attack is from phishing. And in the number of incidents that have happened in the past 12 months, 79% of those have been directly the result of phishing. So still significantly head and shoulders above everyone else. And the next slide I've got at the moment, we'll just go through that in a little bit more detail. And that's an interesting statistic as well. So to put that into context, we estimate across the whole of the country, there's been somewhere in the region of around 10 million offences last year. Now, a quarter of those are cyber related. If you add on fraud to that, typically cyber and fraud go hand in hand, then you're looking at around about 60% of all offences out there are cyber or fraud related, which is an astonishing number. And that figure continues to grow. So That's a really hard and stark figure that's in the government's latest report. And at the end of the presentation, we also have the links there as well if you want to have a read through yourself. Now, I did mention as well in terms of where those attacks are coming from, and there's a really helpful graph on the cyber breaches survey, which just shows you where they are in the common threats facing businesses. So you can see the top three: phishing, impersonation. The BEC stands for business email compromise, which is where someone's perhaps trying to impersonate someone that you may well know. Perhaps it's a customer, could be a supplier, maybe a banking institution, or someone else. And the third one is viruses. So malicious software, malware, is still causing some significant concerns to organizations. And then fourth and fifth on that list there, we're seeing password vulnerability and supply chains, which is interesting. And that's one that seems to be growing year on year. Organized criminals these days recognize that many larger organizations have put in place some really robust processes to reduce their vulnerability. And as a result of that, people are now going after smaller organizations in their supply chains as a way of targeting those big organizations. So we'll be interested to monitor how that develops and progresses over the next year or two. But that's a really good graph in terms of just explaining the common attacks that we're seeing and which government are now capturing as part of their cyber breaches survey. But phishing still very much way out in front at the very top. Now, just briefly in terms of who are cyber criminals, and this is relevant in terms of that focus on antivirus and firewalls today, there's a really helpful guide that's been put together by an insurance company called Travelers, who identify 5 types of cyber criminals. So we've got the social engineer. They use skills to try and encourage you to share information about you or your organization. The spearfisher, that's someone who goes after a very specific individual, usually someone perhaps within a finance department within an organization. The hacker, that could be someone who is a hobbyist, perhaps doing it from a bedroom. It may be a more organized crime gang that's looking to hack into certain organizations, and possibly at the very high level, more of a threat for critical national infrastructure, state-sponsored attacks from countries such as Russia, China, or North Korea. Then we have the rogue employee, the insider threat, which is a really interesting and significant threat that's faced, many businesses face. And we'll be covering that at a later stage on a separate webinar. And then finally, we've got the ransom artist. That's about ransomware, where someone will encrypt your data and insist on a ransom to be paid, usually in a digital currency such as Bitcoin, in order to allow you to have access to your information or data again. Now, antivirus and firewall can actually help us or help protect against 3 of those types of cyber criminals or cyber crime. So spear phishing, hacking, and ransomware. And we'll explain a little bit about how that works. So the first question to ask is, what do we mean by antivirus? I mentioned it's a term that probably most of us are quite familiar with. It's been around for a number of years. And it certainly has evolved. So using the National Cyber Security Centre, the UK's technical authority for cyber, and their definition is that antivirus is a program designed to detect and remove viruses and any other kinds of malicious software from your computer or laptop. And as we were just referring a moment ago about malicious software, this is known as malware for short. It's a code that can harm your computer and data that may well be stored on them as well. Your devices can become infected. It may be that you've downloaded something inadvertently. It could be in an attachment that may have come from an email that you perhaps weren't expecting. It may be that someone's inserted a USB drive that's perhaps been infected as well, or in some situations, simply by going on a website that's not legitimate. So malware can cause some quite significant concerns on your computer. And as we said there, potentially it can encrypt your data, which means that you can't access it. It could erase it potentially or corrupt it in other ways. And that is why it's so important that we always use antivirus software, and importantly as well, that we keep it updated to protect our data and our devices. So how does it work? Well, it's pretty simple, really. And it's important to recognize that antiviruses all pretty much work in a similar way. So the first thing they do is they detect suspicious attachments or malicious software, malware. They quarantine it, so they apportion it to a separate place where it can be safely looked at. And in some situations, they will also delete it as well. And that's really the purpose of it, is to try and prevent that malicious software causing any harm whatsoever to your device. Whoops, let me go back to, I think I've just accidentally, let's try that. There we go. Okay. Now, one of the other advantages that we can look at with a lot of antivirus, and I've got a couple of examples in a moment, is that they often update themselves automatically. And that's really helpful, which means we can allow the antivirus to work in the background without really having to bother too much about it. And here's an example. So this is Norton, which is a widely used antivirus software. In fact, this is taken off my own personal computer. So antivirus applies both as for us as individuals, carrying out our personal lives, as well as it does to small businesses as well. And what you can see on this particular image in this slide here is that what I've done is I've set my personal antivirus software to run a scan every week. So it automatically does it in the background, and it sends me a report, or it flags up something if I need to have a look at it. But I also have the ability to be able to run a smart scan, as you can see on the left-hand side there, anytime that I want. So perhaps I may have been doing a lot of emailing, I've been on the web quite a lot, and I've still got a few days before my scheduled scan. Maybe just for peace of mind, I just want to run this one. And so I press the button and it does it in the background. Now, on the right-hand side of that image, you can see some additional things that we've got there. So there are some features such as a software updater. This is a really helpful feature for me, which means that it also looks to see if any of the applications I've got on my computer are running the latest version of software. Not only does it do that, but it also makes sure that those apps or the latest versions are also secure and safe as well. So it gives me peace of mind. Another thing you can see as well that I've done, and these are some additional services, and lots of antivirus software out there will allow you to subscribe to additional services. I've also installed a virtual private network, VPN, and a password manager so that I don't have to remember the 30, 40, 50 potentially passwords that I use to access a whole range of websites, accounts, devices, etc. And at the very top as well, you can see this particular one, because I pay for it, I get 5 licenses. I've used 4 of those. So some of my other devices, including an iPad, as well as I think one of my children's laptops, is covered by that subscription service as well. So that works in the background. I can configure it how I need to, and it provides me with that safe knowledge that my system is constantly being reviewed and checked for anything coming in that may be suspicious. Now, on this particular slide, I ran this search this morning off my computer, and this is effectively the report that I get presented from Norton on my device. Now, the good news here, we've gone through virtually 12,000 files or items that have been searched, and no threats have been found. So that's great news. I can carry on with my business, don't have to worry too much about it. If in the event that it had found something suspicious, then on the left-hand side, you can see a little plus sign there which says total security risks detected. And what I could have done is clicked on that little plus sign, and it would have given me some information about any of those risks and give me options what to do. So it may have said you can delete this safely, or we're not sure, have a review of it, and I could have made a decision on what I think should be done. So again, it gives me information, and sometimes it allows me to make those decisions on what to do with that information. But this runs in the background. It's a really simple thing to do. So, questions that we often get asked: which antivirus product should I use? And there are indeed hundreds and hundreds of different versions out there. There are some exceptionally good ones that are free of charge. In fact, most computers these days come with inbuilt antivirus, or you can go down a subscription model and you can pay a little bit more, not a huge amount of money, for one of the subscription services offered by some of the more well-known antivirus companies. As we said, if you've got a Windows or an Apple device, then usually these will have antivirus software automatically built in. And when you turn on your computer for the first time, it will automatically set this up for you as well. So companies are now making it even easier for us to use antivirus. A couple of other names that you may well be aware of: McAfee, Avast, there's AVG as well, a whole range of those antivirus companies that are out there. Sometimes, as it says there, you get an opportunity to sign up to a subscription service and perhaps have the first 30 days free. But of course, if you do that, do remember that after 30 days or that free period, that you are likely to be able to pay fees for the continuing use of it. Couple of words of warning. Again, this is taken from the NCSE website. Sometimes antivirus products that you may buy separately don't always work hand in hand with the antivirus software that you've got on your own device that was pre-installed by the manufacturer. Always worth checking that, and usually they will flag that up if there are any compatibility issues. And we always suggest that it's probably worth carrying out your own research just to see what works for you. In my personal opinion, if you're a small organization, or if you're using it for your personal use, then there are some exceptionally good free antivirus software products out there, in addition to the ones that are inbuilt onto your computer. And you don't really have to pay for a subscription service over and above that. So how do you use your antivirus product? The NCSC has got some really useful guidance, and there's a link that takes you straight to the site there on what to do and how to work it. But as we said before, the first and most important thing is when you get your new device and you turn it on, run a full scan to make sure that your computer is free of all known malware. And these antivirus products are updated incredibly regularly, so they are constantly looking for new threats. The software is updated to make sure that you're as protected as you possibly can be from the latest threats. As we said earlier as well, make sure it's set up to scan files and devices automatically, particularly if they're downloaded from the internet. What I often do with my computer is that I'm into photography, so I quite often plug a USB lead in to download some photographs, and so I'm able to scan my hard drive and also the USB drive every time that I connect it to my computer, just in case there's somehow been a virus or something malicious that's attached itself to that particular drive. And also as well, tick the button allows your software to receive updates automatically. Just make sure by going through, usually it will ask you to do this, and sometimes it does it without even asking, but that way you don't have to worry about doing it manually. It will do it all in the background for you without having to worry. Now, question that we often get asked as well about whether you need antivirus products on your smartphone. Now, I've taken this from the National Cybersecurity Centre website. This is their current advice. So the NCSC says actually no, you don't need to have separate antivirus on your smartphone. And the reason they say that is that as long as you are downloading apps from reputable or official stores that are on Google Play, and the Apple Store as well, then there are very, very few risks. Now, my personal advice on this one is that I personally would have antivirus on your smartphone. As you saw on that previous slide, the version that I've got there with Norton, I actually use that on my mobile and my iPad as well, and it doesn't cost me any additional money to do so. Just gives me an extra degree of protection. So one thing to consider, but that's the official advice from government, is that you don't necessarily need to have antivirus on your smartphone. But what they do also recommend, and this is a really important point, is that you should make sure that all of your apps and the tablet or the smartphone itself update automatically when new updates come out. Certainly, if you look at things like iPads, they are updating themselves reasonably regularly at the moment, and usually that's to address security flaws or to improve the user experience. So it's important to set those things up to update automatically. It saves you, again, a lot of hassle and a bit of grief. So that's the antivirus part of things. Very briefly talking about firewalls. And again, firewalls are very similar to antivirus these days in the sense that they are often built in to the equipment that we buy, whether that's a laptop or other form of device. So what a firewall does in simple terms, it creates that buffer zone between your own network and external networks. So it means that it's able to kick out things that potentially look suspicious or malicious before they cause harm to your computer. Again, as we've said, most operating systems already include firewalls. So in most cases, it's simply a question of just switching it on, and then it's working in the background, protecting you as well. If you want further information about firewalls, then the NCSC have a great detailed piece of guidance for you as part of their 10 steps to cybersecurity, which you can find on the link that's on screen at the moment. So a couple of things finally before we finish off, where you can sort of stay up to date with the latest threats, and these are things that we recommend. First and foremost, we mentioned about the NCSC being the government's official technical authority. They produce a weekly threat report, which is an incredibly useful resource for some of the latest threats and scams that are affecting businesses and individuals alike. Signing up to our free membership scheme, we make that available to everyone, and we summarize some of those key points for people as well. Action Fraud also issue alerts both through social media and through email channels for things that they are seeing on the rise. The BBC is a very good and trusted and reliable source, particularly their technology pages for threats. Of course, the Cyber Resilience Centre for London, we're just about to redo our website as well to make it even easier to find information about threats. Many banking institutions now, certainly the big 4 or 5, are incredibly good at alerting customers to threats. And certainly now, if you go onto their websites and you log in as an online banking customer, usually you'll find something there that gives you an indication of some of the latest threats, and making sure that you check what you're doing before you press send if you're sending money to a different account. HMRC, one of the most commonly impersonated organisations by cyber criminals, also produce some great advice. And indeed, government as well, typically through the NCSC, are very good at providing a range of guidance documents that you can download and read, and hopefully improve your cyber resilience. Other things that we encourage, and we've got webinars that we're focused on each of those: 2-step verification, which means that you, in addition to perhaps putting in your password, there's another way that you need to complete before you're able to have access to your systems. Lots and lots of websites, including shopping websites such as Amazon these days, insist that you put 2FA or 2-step verification in place before you go shopping, which is really great news. We mentioned earlier about the importance of updating antivirus, but more broadly, operating systems and software that you've got running on your devices. If you're a business, creating a separate account for an administrator, so that if you've got staff who are using the same device, they can't access everything. That just reduces the risk of breaches and potential conflicts that you may have there as well. Incident response plan is a really important part of cyber resilience. In the event, and we saw the statistics at the beginning of the webinar, that you may become a victim of a cybercrime, knowing what to do and quickly respond to help you get back up and running as quickly as possible is a really important part of your overarching cyber resilience. And of course, we've got the Getting the Basics Right program, which in year 1 takes you through those really simple, easy things that everyone should be doing, whether you're a small business, a charity, or even an individual. They don't cost anything to do, and it's just about giving yourself the basic protection that we understand from Microsoft will protect against somewhere in the region of about 90% of cyber threats that are out there. So really simple stuff designed to help people improve their cyber resilience. If you do, of course, become a victim of a cybercrime, and as we saw earlier, sadly too many people do, then the place to report is through Action Fraud. You'll be delighted to hear that Action Fraud is going through a pretty significant change at the moment, and there'll be a relaunch of Action Fraud later on this year with a significantly improved customer journey, which we're looking forward to as well. And you can see there that there's the ability to be able to flag suspicious emails, text messages as well. Now, it's worth saying that if you do send an email to that email address there, report@phishing.gov.uk, UK takes very, very quick action against websites or emails, and it's been very, very successful in taking down malicious websites. So please do make sure that you can do that. Certain email systems that you've got, Outlook, I know, for example, you can actually have a little add-in or an add-on on your email system, which means that if you get an email that comes in that looks like phishing, you just simply have to press report, and it automatically reports it to that NCSC details there. And I think we understand somewhere in the region about within 2 months of that going live, about 1 million suspect emails were reported by the public. So really, really positive. I think over 10,000 malicious websites were blocked or taken down by the authorities. So they do act very quickly. And the same again is with text messages. We all get them. I get probably 5 or 6 a week from various places. So just forward that to 7726, and again a similar approach gets taken there as well. So that's it from me, a short and sweet presentation and a webinar about antivirus and firewall. Probably one of the simplest and most important things you can do to boost your cyber resilience. I hope you found that helpful. The slides and a YouTube video will be available shortly, but please also visit our website, sign up for our free membership screen, and also contact us if there's anything you need to know about cyber resilience and how we can help you. Thank you.